So again, thanks for joining us tonight. We are going to be talking about both of our master's programs that are in the Department of Educational Psychology, Clinical Mental Health Counseling, and we abbreviate that as CMHC. So if you hear us say CMHC, that's how we shorten that. And then also our school counseling program. In this PowerPoint, you can see that we have hyperlinks to each of our program websites. And also, before we get started, I forgot to ask any of you if you are interested in our St. George or our Salt Lake City programs. So we do have programs for both of these master's degrees in Salt Lake City, and then also at our graduate center in St. George. Okay.
And these are our core faculty members in the clinical mental health counseling program and in the school counseling program. I should add that in there as well. And we have some additional professors who work with us as well, who aren't core faculty, but we have very specially selected additional professors who work with us as adjuncts who specialize in certain areas that some of our courses are in. But these are the core faculty that you'll be working with. They teach across the three programs. So they teach in the school counseling program, the clinical mental health counseling program, and our PhD program in counseling psychology. I'll start by telling you a little bit about the clinical mental health counseling program. So I'll talk about this program for a moment, and then Dr. Metz will talk about the school counseling program as well. CMHC, that's our abbreviation for clinical mental health counseling. CMHC students work with individuals, they work with families, they work with couples, they work with groups. And so our students get experiences working in a lot of those different settings as well. So if you're interested in working with a breadth of individuals, a breadth of different issues, a CMHC degree is really great for that. Our graduates work in a number of different environments. They work, and I put some of them up here on the screen, outpatient centers, they work at inpatient hospitals, they work at clinical or community mental health agencies. Some of them work in private practices and group practices. They work in a number of different places. Our program's philosophy really focuses on a strengths-based approach. And I think that's one of the things that stands out about our program. Our courses are really designed to speak to how individuals grow across the lifespan and how they are able to be resilient in spite of even hardships. And the type of training that we provide really helps students and prepares them to work with individuals across a range of presenting issues, a range of presenting concerns, depression, trauma, anxiety, adjustment disorders, all sorts of different things. And it also helps prepare students to work with clients from various different cultural backgrounds as well. And that's one of the things that I'm really proud of about our program, is that we have a strong multicultural focus too. A lot of the work that you'll do in our program is what I call both windows and mirrors. And I think Dr. Metz would echo this as well in the school counseling program. But the windows aspect means that you'll be looking out a window to learn more about people that maybe you haven't encountered before or interacted with, and communities that and individuals who perhaps have very different walks of life than you. And at the same time, we ask students to also look at a mirror and to take a closer look and reflect on who you are and learn more about yourself. And so part of being a competent therapist, a competent counselor, is being able to look at a mirror. And the more we know more about ourselves, the more we're able to do better work with our clients, the more we're aware of how our values and how our beliefs may influence our work. So what issues might you work with your clients about as a counselor? Well, there are a number of different things. I put some of them on here, but this of course isn't an exhaustive list. But a lot of our students work with these sorts of issues with clients they work with. So anxiety, depression, family issues, interpersonal concerns, identity issues, adaptation to disability and chronic illness, substance abuse, other addictions, sexual abuse, domestic violence, various types of trauma, eating disorders, grief and loss. There's been a lot even more recently too with COVID. Each of us have probably had a little bit different experience with it, but it's brought up a lot of issues for a lot of folks. And so our students also work with people who are dealing with grief from COVID, with dealing with job loss, all sorts of different implications for that as well.
School counselors are licensed educators, and they really play a crucial role in the academic success and career development of students in the K through 12 school system. As you can see on this slide, school counselors play a role in the academic development, career development, and even personal development of children. So focusing on the well-being of the child. This is a great time to get into the field of school counseling. One, because there is a lot more funding for school counselors and especially elementary school counselors if you're interested in working with a younger population. We also have a school counselor shortage in the state of Utah. Our students who are currently on internship were all able to get paid internships because there just aren't enough school counselors who are licensed to fill all of the positions here in the state. Another exciting aspect about school counseling is the Utah State Board of Education has come up with a new approach of school counseling. So they have a whole child approach. It's called Utah's Portrait of a Graduate. And I provided you with a hyperlink so that you can read a little bit more about the State Board of Education and how they're hoping to help children. Also, the State Board of Education has created their own comprehensive guidance model, which is how school counselors work in the state of Utah. School counseling has changed over the last even 10 years. School counselors used to be more responsive versus now the focus is on prevention and being proactive, looking at the whole child. Here in the state of Utah, we do have a lot of efforts to promote school-based mental health services. So school counselors work side by side with school psychologists, school social workers, teachers, administrators, and parents. So the role of the school counselor is now very collaborative. There is a leadership component. There's also it's much more data driven than it ever was before. And school counselors use research to be accountable and to show that what they're doing is effective. I also put a hyperlink in here because the role of the school counselor is different depending upon what age level the school counselor is working with. So if you click on that hyperlink, you will be taken to the American School Counselor Association website, and they have different things you can read about the role of the school counselor in the elementary versus the middle versus the high school.
And I'll just speak briefly about our program objectives. So these are program objectives we have in both of our programs. You can see there are quite a few up here, but these are our general program goals. And we could go over each of these in quite a bit of detail, but we won't keep you here too long tonight. So I'll just briefly mention them. And the reason why we wanted to make sure to mention them to you all is because these goals you'll see in each of our classes as well. Many of our classes address a lot of these goals, even just in one course. And so I wanted you to be aware of some of those goals that we have for students who enter our program.
And just to give you a general overview of our program, we have a very structured curriculum. And the purpose of that is to get you into our program, get you trained and ready to go into the licensure aspect of your field. Our courses are offered mostly at night from 4:35 to 7:05. Sorry, there was a little typo there. There are a few exceptions, and you'll see this in our course schedule. We'll show you our course schedule and the courses that you're taking. We'll talk a little bit more about the clinical training opportunities for practicum and internship. There is no thesis requirement, so this is a master's in education or an MED, but it does lead to licensure. In school counseling, you get licensed at the State Board of Education. And for the clinical mental health counseling program, you get licensed by DOPL, the Department of Occupational and Professional Licensing. Both of our programs also have a capstone, a comprehensive exam, and we'll also talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes.
And one brief thing I just wanted to mention about our no thesis requirement is that we do still have some coursework that students take in statistics. And the reason why is because we want students to leave our program and be able to be good consumers of science. And so it helps a lot if you have a background and at least a little bit of research, so you can consume it well and apply it well to your clinical work.
Absolutely. And if I had to add one other thing, if this is a stepping stone for you into a doctoral program and you are interested in research, if your sights are set on a PhD, then it does help to get involved in research. And you are welcome to contact any of our faculty and hop on any of our research teams. We typically have undergraduates, master's students, and doctoral students all working with us on our research. So that's always an option for you, but it's not required.
That's a great point. Yes, and faculty have pretty diverse research interests and expertise. I know AJ shared a little about hers a moment ago, and we even have some intersections in our research, and our labs collaborate with each other, and we're working on a study right now that we're currently collecting data on together. And I think you'll find a lot of those collaborations across faculty members. And my area of research interest primarily centers in lifelong learning and continuing education, and how we can help psychologists and counselors maintain competence across their professional trajectory, how we can improve things like mentoring and those sorts of things along the way. So yes, and I think a lot of the faculty, just to echo what Dr. Metz said, are very excited when students are interested in research. So I think there are lots of opportunities to potentially get involved in that if that's something that interests you. I'll speak very briefly about some professional identity opportunities, and Dr. Metz, feel free to jump into if there are other things that you would add to this slide as well. But many of our students in both programs are members of both state and national professional organizations, and we have some funding through differential, which I think we'll talk about a little later, which gives students some funding for those sorts of things. There's also up to $400 of travel funds each year in the program. There's some travel funds also at the graduate school level as well that require matching funds with our department. There are a couple of different avenues, both for just going to a conference that you're really excited and interested in, and for conferences that you might want to present research at. We also have our students, as Dr. Metz mentioned in the last slide, our students do take a comprehensive exam before they leave as well. Is there anything else you would add, Dr. Metz, to this?
Also, that we pay for the registration of your comprehensive exam. And in the school counseling program, we also pay for the study materials for you to study for. And maybe we can each talk about our comprehensive exams. In the school counseling program, the comprehensive exam is the praxis. It's similar to, if you're a teacher, it's similar to the praxis that you would have taken for your teaching license, but this is specifically for school counselors. So we pay for you to register for the licensing exam. We pay for your study materials. And the cutoff score, or the score that you need to obtain for our comprehensive exam, is the exact same score you would need to obtain for licensure in the state of Utah.
And I'll speak briefly about the clinical mental health counseling program. So ours is similar. We have the CPCE exam, and we set our standard as the cutoff. It varies a little year to year because it's based on the average for people who take the exam, but it's typically right around 87% or so. And our students have been very successful with passing the exam in the past. And we do offer opportunities if students need them to remediate things and to take the exam again if they need to. Generally, our students don't need that, but that is an opportunity. And really, our hope and our goal with that is that students then leave the program ready to take the licensure exam, that they're prepared, that they've already gotten feedback on that, those sorts of things. And I did also just want to mention, as we're talking about conferences, that a lot of our students do attend conferences, and we really encourage that in the program. A lot of faculty attend conferences as well. They can be great opportunities to network, to get to know others in the field. I remember when I was in grad school, I was even offered jobs at conferences. So I think they're really great for a number of different reasons. And of course, there are always interesting talks at them as well. And so that's one thing that I'm really proud of about our students, is that they attend these pretty regularly too. And the feedback that I hear from students is that they find it really helpful. I'll talk a little bit about the specifics of the CMHC program, and Dr. Metz will talk also about some specifics with the school counseling program as well. But for the CMHC program, we are a 60 credit our program. That is a requirement that seems to be impending with the MPCAC accreditation board, which is that's the Masters in Psychology and Counseling Accreditation Council. Both of our programs are members of MPCAC, and this accreditation is really important because we maintain high standards in our program that are met through MPCAC, and there are a number of different programs that are accredited through MPCAC as well. It's a national accreditation council. So the CMHC program is a 3-year, 60 credit program. It's a fall and a spring semester program. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. It's a practice-based program, meaning that there's no thesis requirement. The summer courses are not required for our Salt Lake City students, although it is recommended in their second year. And our St. George students do take courses over the summer, and I'll explain why in a moment. So we'll talk more about that in just a moment. There are opportunities for electives in positive psychology as well within our department. And as Dr. Metz mentioned, our courses are generally offered at night. There are a few courses that are held during the day, and I'll talk about those later as we go through the presentation. So you can think about how that might work with your work schedule if you're working right now as well. But we do hold most of our courses towards the end of the day. So because most of our CMHC students hold employment while they're completing their degrees. So this allows them to work while they're still attending our classes. Instead of a thesis, as I mentioned before, our students take the CPCE exam, and that's the Counselor Preparation Comprehensive Exam, and it mirrors the NCE, which is the National Counselor Examination. That's the exam that graduates take in order to become licensed as CMHC. So in your third year, you will study for this exam, and that prepares you for taking the real licensure exam, which is the NCE exam. Oh, yes. Thank you, Dr. Metz, for putting on the accreditation website as well.
If
you
you
want to talk a little bit?
Sure. If you're interested in our MPCAC accreditation, it is parallel to CACREP accreditation. There are 2 types of accreditation bodies for masters in counseling programs. CACREP is for a certain type of program that has instructors or faculty members who are counselor educators. The MPCAC accreditation is for masters in counseling programs who have counseling psychologists or clinical psychologists as their faculty members, as their instructors. So the difference is CACREP accredited programs may or may not be linked to doctoral programs. Our MPCAC accredited programs are linked to doctoral programs as well. So in both of our programs, you may be taking classes with doctoral students in counseling psychology or school psychology, in addition to other people in our department. So those of you who would be going into the school counseling program, you may be in classes with school psychologists. Those of you in the clinical mental health counseling program, you may also be in courses with the school counselors or counseling psychologists, or even other people in our programs in educational psychology. So we do have a multidisciplinary approach to teaching, where you might be learning either with your own cohorts of clinical mental health counseling or school counseling students, or you could be also learning alongside other types of counselors. So the MPCAC accreditation, very similar to CACREP. I would say a major difference in the accrediting bodies are that MPCAC values diversity, multiculturalism. So you will see that as a thread in our courses, in the things we teach you. Also, it has a positive psychological foundation, as Dr. Taylor was talking about some of our program objectives. We do come from a strengths-based approach. We value empirically supported treatment strategies that we will teach you. And then also everything has this multicultural and EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion feel as well. Those are things we value. And that is why we have an MPCAC accreditation, but I want to let you know that that parallels the CACREP accreditation, and I would say takes it a step further. So that's about the accreditation. You can read about it. We provided a link. A couple things I would tell you about the school counseling program is right now we have a 51 credit hour program. It's a 2-year program. We actually start in the summer, and some of the clinical mental health counseling students, those who are in St. George, would also start in the summer. So if you are applying, technically you're applying in the application for a fall 2022 start date. However, those applying in the St. George program or even our school counselors in Salt Lake City would start in mid-May. Okay, just so you know. We can talk about practicum and internship opportunities, but typically they're in local K through 12 school districts. I already mentioned the praxis exam. Something else you should know is by completing our program, you're also completing all the requirements for the state of Utah's College and Career Readiness Certificate. So on your transcript, it will say College and Career Readiness Certificate. And you will also be acknowledged by the State Board of Education for having this certificate, and they will additionally put those words on your license. Okay. I should also mention that as soon as you enter the program, we do require you to go through a background check, a federal background check and fingerprinting. Some of you who are working in the schools already have that, and that's great. Those of you that don't, that is something that we would require you to pass. Okay. And this is what a typical SLC stands for, Salt Lake City, and SGU stands for St. George. So you can see this is our school counseling program of study. We have a lot of really great classes, very interesting classes, all very applicable to being a school counselor. Every single course has some application. I also want to let you know that each of our courses is designed to make sure that we meet all the requirements that the state board has for licensing. Okay. A lot of great classes. I just provide, as I mentioned, all of our classes in the Salt Lake City program are 4:35 to 7:05. Sometimes we have a summer exception where we teach a condensed course, career counseling or group counseling, and that's during a week from 8 to 5. However, the last 2 years, due to COVID, we've been having these courses online, so I'm not sure what that's going to look like for our Salt Lake City students. So we can talk more about that, but you can see a fall, spring schedule. M is for Monday nights, T for Tuesday nights, W Wednesday, and TH for Thursday. If you see an OL or online, that is a course that is offered online. If you want to, thanks, Jennifer. Also, this is what the St. George schedule looks like. And as Dr. Taylor was mentioning before, there is a reason that the St. George students take more courses in the summer. And that is because we believe it's so important for us to teach some classes in person. So the students in our St. George program sit at the Graduate Center in St. George. There's a classroom, and they sit on the receiving end of a broadcast from our Salt Lake City classroom. We believe that there are some courses that we just don't want the students to be sitting and receiving this type of education. So we want to go down, and we go down to St. George. We spend 7 days, so 1 full week, and then 2 days in the next week we spend with students from 8 to 5. And during the first summer, they take 2 courses back to back, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. And then we come down the second summer and also teach some of the courses in person. Dr. Taylor, did you want to mention anything about our summer course or down in St. George?
Sure, because I get the pleasure of, at least the last couple of years, getting to teach the group counseling class. And as Dr. Metz mentioned, the last 2 years, because of COVID, we've had to do this all online. But before that, we were teaching in person, and our hope is that we'll just get back to that safely soon. But I think, if anything, COVID has taught us to be very creative about how we can help students continue to learn and grow and practice skills, even if we're doing things virtually. And so we've gotten quite creative with things like Flipgrid and other means to give students opportunities to still practice, even if we can't physically be close. But that's one of the things that I think both of us, Dr. Metz and me, love, is being able to go down to St. George with the students and meet there in person. Obviously, we've had to make some adjustments with COVID, but our hope is to get back down there soon and have more in-person classes.
Yes, and if I had to say one more thing, I just want to point out, we'll talk about practicum and internship in just a few minutes, but I just want to point out year one is in the left-hand column, and you can see that practicum for all students, whether or not in Salt Lake or St. George in our school counseling program. Practicum is offered in the spring, and internship is conducted during your second year in the program. So practicum is an introduction to the practice of school counseling. It's about 5 to 8 hours a week. The internship is about 12 to 15 hours a week in a K through 12 school, and that occurs over the fall and the spring semester of your second year. And we'll talk more about those opportunities. We have a slide just on the clinical experiences.
Great. Now I'll tell you a little bit about the CMHC program. We'll start with Salt Lake City, and then we'll talk a little bit about St. George as well. So as I mentioned earlier, our program is a 3-year program. And that's because in the first year, our students, the first year in the program is generally a lot of coursework. And so you'll be learning counseling theories, you'll be learning counseling skills, you'll be learning ethics, you'll be learning multiculturalism and things like that are important as a foundational base before you jump into doing clinical work. And so the first year is really designed to give you a lot of those tangible skills so that when you start your second year and you start your practicum, you're ready to go. And we have an in-house departmental clinic where students practice their second year of the program. They work with a pretty broad range of people at the clinic. It's open to it's on campus. And so sometimes students on campus come to the clinic, but it's also a really low cost community resource. And so we have a lot of folks in the broader community, particularly low income individuals who may not otherwise receive counseling in other places, who come to our counseling center, and we're able to provide counseling for them as well. The in-house clinic is run by Dr. Amber Whiteley, who's one of our core faculty members. So you'll get a chance to work a lot directly with our core faculty members while you're doing your clinical work there. And the second year really prepares you for the third year in our program. The third year is your internship year, much like the second year that Dr. Metz was talking about with the school counseling program. So that in that third year of the program, you'll be working in the community at a site of your choosing with the training director's approval. And so sites range from students who work with children to students who work with adults, students who are interested in working in addictions, substance use, domestic violence, trauma. So those are really based on your interest areas and areas of developing specialty for you. We have quite a broad range of different sites that we have approved as faculty for students to work at. So there's quite a bit of diversity in the experiences that you can get during that year as well. And most of our students work about 25 to 35 hours a week when they're doing their internship. It's a pretty intensive site, but that depends a bit on their schedules, what they can accommodate for work during that year. But this gives you a general sense of what courses look like throughout the first, second, and third years in Salt Lake City, so you have an idea of what to expect. I do want to talk a little bit about the St. George campus as well, because it does look different, and there are some important reasons for that. And really, it's what Dr. Metz highlighted, so I won't spend too much time on it, but a lot of the courses that you'll take down there are broadcast, because obviously we can't be in two places at once. But over the summer term, that's one reason why we offer summer classes for our St. George students, because we want to have those face-to-face interactions with our students, and so that's why the St. George students actually start in the summer. Our Salt Lake City students in the CMHC program start in the fall, but again, so we can have some more contact directly with students, we start the St. George program in the summer. So during the fall and the spring terms, if you're interested in the St. George campus, you would go, as Dr. Metz mentioned, to the Graduate Center in St. George, and you would be broadcast into the courses in Salt Lake City live. I teach, for example, a career counseling class for students. And so in the past, that one has been broadcast. And even though it's broadcast down there, I try as best I can to still make sure there are opportunities for students to practice. It's really not all didactic where they're just listening to me, where I'm spraying a lot of information and praying something sticks. The goal is for them to have opportunities to practice. And some of it has been us getting creative about how to make that happen. But if you're in the St. George campus, you'll actually start your graduate degree in May of 2022. And so that means you'll be taking several courses ahead of the Salt Lake City students. And that gives professors a chance to meet with you. And again, gives us a chance to have face-to-face classes with you. The same thing happens as you'll see during the summer of year 2. So you'll take summer classes then as well. This is just a general overview of what the first, second, and third year looks like in our program. So the first year is primarily a lot of coursework, again, to give you that foundational knowledge. Second year, you'll still continue to take some coursework, and you'll start your practicum at our departmental clinic as well. And then in your third year, that's where you'll work in the community. There are some limited courses, but I think it's 1 or 2 that are offered. I think one in the fall and one in the spring, if I remember right, but it's not nearly as many. So it gets lighter on courses because you're going to be doing more clinical work during that third year.
And Dr. Taylor, did you want to mention paid opportunities for internship for the clinical mental health counseling students?
Yes, that's a good point. And that's true actually for both the Salt Lake City and the St. George students. We have students right now, a lot of our students who are at paid internship sites right now. So a number of the sites that we have approved as faculty do offer paid internships, which is really helpful, especially because students are working quite a bit, maybe 25, 35 hours a week. So some of them are paid a certain stipend. Some of them are on campus, and so some of them come with tuition benefits, and then some of them are hourly pay as well. But those are all written out in our articulation agreements. So when students decide on a site, that's all contracted out at that time as well. Thanks, Dr. Mitz.
And I think the only other thing I would want to talk about practicum and internship sites is you do have a choice. And so for school counseling or clinical mental health counseling, depending upon your interests, and this is where I was asking the school counseling applicants what level of student you're interested in working at. We have alumni all over the state, and they are happy to welcome our students for practicum or internship sites, but there are also schools looking to pay someone to be a paid intern. And so there are a lot of options for practicum and internship sites. Some students elect to do a non-paid internship, and that would be less hours, 12 to 15 hours a week over the course of 2 semesters. This is for school counseling program. And some students elect to do a full-time internship because it's paid, and a school will hire you to work full-time actually as a school counselor. So we do provide for both of the programs. We provide information about practicum placements. So the school counseling program has an evening where we bring in directors from many different districts, all the way from, Davis and Weber down to St. George or down to Washington County School District. And they talk about what it's like to work in their particular district, why you would want to work there, what are the benefits, how much they pay. And we do this with respect to internships and also jobs. And so twice during the time that you're in the program, you get to learn about internships that are available, jobs that are available. You get to learn about the different school districts. And then Dr. Taylor, I know you have a special event as well.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you. In fact, ours is coming up pretty soon. It'll be on December 1st. So we have an internship and career fair for our students as well. And so much like in the school counseling program, we invite different internship sites to meet with our students. It's a great opportunity for our students to network, to get to know different sites that are available in the community, and to start building some of those connections. And those are opportunities that start as early as your first year in the program. And I encourage students in their first year in the program to attend so that they can get a sense for what are some potential opportunities for me down the road? What are some places that I could possibly work at? So you'll have that opportunity 3 times in our program to meet different sites and to get to know what sort of training opportunities are out there. And if you'd like, I can, or AJ, do you want to go over this slide?
Oh, sure. And I'm open, doesn't matter.
Great. I know a lot of students had questions about the GREs, so I imagine this might be one we take just a little bit more time to chat about. But our deadline for admission or for applying to the program is December 15th. So make sure to keep that date in mind. The basic requirements are that you have an undergraduate degree. Sometimes students will ask us or applicants will ask us, do I have to have a degree that's in psychology, for example, to apply to your program? And the answer is no. You can come in with a degree from another program. That's fine. And in some ways, having some diversity can add to a program as well, coming in with a different perspective. As far as the undergraduate transcripts go, the graduate school requires a GPA of at least 3.0 or higher, and we require that GRE scores are less than 5 years old. We have made an exception. I know several of you asked, I think it was Lucy, Elise, and Julianne, if I remember right. I've been trying to take some notes about if you have a master's degree, do you have to take the GREs? And we've decided as faculty, we've chatted about this before, that that we will make an exception for students who already have a master's degree, because the point of the GREs is supposed to show your abilities, your aptitude towards being able to be successful in graduate school. And if you've already completed a master's degree, that's another way that you've shown that you've been able to be successful in a graduate program and are promising in another graduate program as well. So we have made an exception. I will check, and for those of you who have a master's degree, I'll see if this is a question that's come up more recently. We haven't often in the past had students, at least since I've been here, who already had a master's degree who were transitioning to ours. But I'm getting more students who are asking about that now. So I'll also see if on our application form, if there's somewhere you can just note that you have a master's degree, so that whoever's reading your application notices that as well, that that's the reason why you didn't take the GREs. So I'll look and see if there's an easy spot you can just notify us of that on the application. So those of you who do have a master's degree, if you wouldn't mind and I'll put my email address in the chat, if you wouldn't mind just sending me an email, I'll let you know once I get a little bit more information on that from our administrators. So more from me on that in a moment. There were some other questions around the GREs too. What is generally considered a good GRE score? I'd written that one down. And I don't know if there were other questions as well. AJ, should we talk about that now, or do you want to talk about that later? I'm not sure if you had that somewhere in your slides later.
No, we can talk about it now. And I see there's also a question, is the GRE something that has to be complete before applying? We would need the GRE score to complete your application. If for some reason you're so close to the deadline and you're taking the GRE on December 15th, we definitely keep in touch with Dr. Taylor or myself to let us know where you are in that process of taking the GRE, but it is part of the application. So yes, we would want you to complete the GRE before the applications are due, but if you're very close, let us know. We can hold off for a few days. The GRE is one component of a comprehensive review of your application. Okay, so GRE scores are important to us, and sometimes when we have 2 amazing applicants and we just cannot decide, it may come down to the GRE score. So I would recommend studying for the GRE, trying your best. I have a handout on the GRE that I can send to you along with this PowerPoint. We also have, and Dr. Taylor may not have this particular information because this is her first year as director of the Clinical Mental Health Counseling Program, but I actually can also, to those of you interested in school counseling, I can send out our program statistics from the year 2020, where you can see the range of GRE scores and also the average GRE score for each of the different areas that the GRE measures. We typically do see, I will tell you this, typically for applicants to our counseling, our master's programs in counseling, we do typically see higher verbal versus quantitative scores. Okay, so don't feel bad if you take the GRE and you say to yourself, well, my verbal is a lot higher than the quantitative. I mean, the GRE is important to us, but also it's one component of a comprehensive application. And if you have stellar letters of recommendation and personal statement, and you're bringing in a lot to our program, the GRE score may not have as much weight as some of these other things, but it is a component. It's important. It's a component of our comprehensive review of your application, but it's one of the components.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. I would echo that as well. It's one metric, but we have multiple metrics, and we'll talk a bit more about those in just a moment as we talk about what sorts of things can make you a competitive applicant and what suggestions do we have for you. The other thing I'll say is the GRE scores can be helpful for students who maybe have a lower GPA. Maybe you really struggled or you were in a major that wasn't a good fit for you, and your GPA really doesn't reflect your academic ability. Can be helpful for students like that as well. And so I want to say in the same breath that, that's one component. And again, it can be helpful for some students who might want to bolster some other pieces of their application as well.
Right. And I would want to say one more thing. So the graduate school does require a 3.0 undergraduate GPA. However, we can also make an exception for that. So each of the directors is given an exemption or two for that particular year. So if you, for some reason, things happen, struggles happen as an undergrad, and I just want you to know, don't let that stop you from applying if this is something that you really want to pursue, because we also have an exception that we can do for that.
Matt asked a question about if the GREs can be taken online. I know that they could last year through Proctor's, and I think that they still can since COVID is still a concern. Do you know the answer to that, Dr. Metz? I can look it up if you don't.
The GRE actually was offered online and was also offered for people to take it during COVID, to take it in their homes. And there is particular protocol that has to be followed. But yes, so I can send you a link. So in my GRE handout, I have a link to ETS, which is the company that administers the GRE. And so you can definitely look online. So there is an application to fill out. This is a hyperlink to it. You can go into the application, begin to fill it out, leave the application, but remember to hit submit by December 15th. That is important. You're welcome to upload unofficial transcripts when you apply to the university. If we offer you admissions and you accept our admissions, the graduate school will ask you to then upload or send us a formal transcript. But right now, unofficial is fine. With respect to the GRE, we should also mention if there's a place to enter in a code, you can enter in this particular GRE code. It's for our department. You do not have to take the psychology subtest. That's not something that we review. And your scores on the GRE are good for 5 years.
All right, so a couple other things that we require in your application are a curriculum vitae, CV, or a resume. And that's basically an overview of your accomplishments. And so what we would encourage you to do is to be sure to highlight all of your relevant work experiences, all of your volunteering, perhaps it's teaching, maybe you've studied abroad. We want to get a sense of who you are, what sorts of things you've done so far. And so your resume or your curriculum vitae is an opportunity to do that. The other thing that I'll mention is your personal statement. So we require that students also submit a personal statement, applicants submit a personal statement of about 1 to 2 pages. And so this past year, we had about 170 applicants between our 2 programs. And of the 170 applicants, we typically invite about 25 to 30 applicants for each program for an interview. And then of those 25, we typically select about 12 students to be admitted into our program. We are a smaller program, and part of the reason why we have opted to be a small program is because we want you to be taught by core faculty, and we want you to be able to have a graduate student experience where you have some meaningful relationships with faculty members and with others in your cohort. And those things, it's easier to do when cohort sizes are smaller. So that being said, aside from the other materials that we've talked about, the personal statement is a chance for us to get to know you a bit better. And so we put up here a couple of questions that you might consider as you think about what you would want to put in your personal statement. And I really want to underscore this last question here. And it is, why is this field, why is this program a good fit for you? So why CMHC or why school counseling? We get many personal statements that are beautifully written, that are really thoughtfully done, where applicants talk about what they've done, they talk about their volunteer work and why they're passionate about, or what they've done prepared them for this field. But sometimes the one piece that's missing that would just draw the faculty into a specific application is why CMHC in particular, or why school counselor? Why do you want to be a school counselor? Why do you want to go into the field of clinical mental health counseling? So as you're developing your personal statement, that's one important thing to spend some time thinking about. Why am I drawn to this particular degree? Is there anything else you would add to that too, Dr. Mitz?
Sure. I would add, you might be also a good fit. You might want to talk about your fit with respect to your interests, your values, your skill set, your previous experiences, how our training model is really a good fit for you, right? We mentioned having a strengths-based approach, training you in empirically supported treatment methods, having a diversity and a multiculturalism value within our program. So these are all things that you can talk about. I get questions, how long should my personal statement be? And I would say 1 to 2 pages, no longer than that, because this ensures that we're going to read the whole thing, right? And so a couple of other tips. You may be applying to multiple graduate programs. That's great. But be sure to tailor this particular personal statement so that we know you're invested in school counseling or clinical mental health counseling. If we see something that's more general, or you send us your personal statement for the social work program, we'll think that you haven't really set on a focus, or you don't really have a clear goal. So make sure in your personal statement you are addressing the particular program that you're applying to. Okay. And for school counseling, make sure you don't say school psychology, right? So we also have a school psychology master's and doctoral program, and it has some similarities to being a school counselor, but it's a different field with even a different license. And so be sure that you're researching these things and can speak about your particular career goal. Also, I just want one more question about the resume. I also get questions, should that only be 1 page? And I would say, no, this is not the place to be humble. Really provide us a comprehensive view of all that you've been doing. And if you have been out of the workforce or out of education for a while, there is nothing wrong with that. That is completely fine. Maybe you think about creating a functional resume that showcases your experiences or skills. And I would say if you're applying to the school counseling program in your resume, you might even want to have a heading that's related to working with children and adolescents, right? If you're applying to the clinical mental health counseling program, you might want to have a heading that's related to helping others.
That's a great suggestion. And that reminded me too, when it comes to your resume too, and also in particular, your personal statement, think about transferable skills. I know a few of you, as we were talking earlier and you were introducing yourselves, for example, might come from the field of dentistry. Think about What are some things that you learned, if you're from a different background, if you have a different educational background, work experiences, think about what sorts of things are transferable skills that you bring into this program. We look at things like interpersonal skills, for example. Obviously, you need to have good interpersonal skills to be a counselor. And so those are things that could be transferable, even if you came from a different work background. So think about ways that you might be able to highlight and build on those experiences. And you can think about those things in creative ways as well. How do you capture those transferable skills, and how do they connect with your interest in being a counselor?
And then with respect to letters of recommendation, we do require 3 letters of recommendation. And I would encourage you to think about who are the 3 best people that can talk about your character, that can talk about your past or current performance, whether it be at work, whether it be as a student, whether it be in a volunteer setting, okay? Or even your ability to do graduate level work. And I know there was a question about who I should ask for a letter of recommendation. I will say we love to see letters of recommendations from other professors, right? Other university individuals, because we trust them, because we think they know. As faculty reviewing your applications, if we see another letter from another faculty, we think they know, they've been in higher education, they know what to look for, or they know how to talk about your skills and ability to do graduate level work. However, if you haven't been in school for 10 years, that may not be the best person to talk about your skill set, right? If they don't remember you. If they remember you, great, ask them to be a letter writer. If you had some kind of a interaction with them, maybe you were working in their lab or something like that. But if they wouldn't really remember you, if it's been a few years, I would say who can talk most specifically about these amazing skills that you have, or your personality, or your values, or how this person thinks you could be a great clinical mental health counselor or school counselor. For school counselors, I've actually had people submit, if they work in a school, a letter from the principal. I've had people submit a letter from their own school counselor from their own high school, and those are great. I would say think about who can say the most about you, who can talk highly about you, and make sure that person knows exactly what you're applying for. So I would even provide that person, once you ask that person to be a letter writer, give them your resume, and also ask if they would like some bullet points to help them think through what maybe they saw you accomplish, or some of the things that maybe stand out and they could write about.
And just building on what you shared, Dr. Metz, a couple of other things that I would offer. I remember Andrew asked a question around, if it's been 5 years or so since I've seen these professors, should I reach out to them or not? And I would say a couple of things around that. One is, I would echo what AJ said, what Dr. Metz said around, if it's been long enough that they don't remember you, then it probably won't be a very strong letter. And that's another opportunity for us to get to know you more. And so we miss out on that opportunity if your letter writers aren't able to really speak to your strengths. But if it's been 5 years, but you've still kept in touch with the professors, or they still remember you, maybe you can meet with them and give them a refresher or an update on what you've been up to since then. Then I think in those instances, it could be perfectly appropriate to invite them and to ask them to write you a letter. What I would suggest is that when you ask people to write you a letter, ask them if they can write you if they would feel comfortable writing you a strong letter of recommendation, because that can be helpful too, to get a sense for, do these people feel like they know me well enough to be able to write that sort of letter? And I would also say, if, let's say, it's been too long and you don't feel like the faculty members that you knew back in school, you haven't been able to keep in touch with them, I would think about with employers, if you're looking at employers, for example, or supervisors or other folks, and let's say they come from a different field than the counseling field. Again, similar to the advice I gave you before about thinking about your own transferable skills, I would think about that in the context of your employers, and inviting them to share, to think about some of the transferable skills that might be important as a counselor as well, and highlighting those on the application. I wouldn't recommend, and we have gotten recommendations from these folks before, but I would not recommend your parents or your friend or your therapist, because they can be biased in a lot of ways. And so those tend to be not great options for letter writers. Oh, and Lucy asked a good question. Do you have any formatting guidelines for personal statements or resumes?
We don't. And I would say for your personal statement, feel free if you want to include little headings in there or a title, that's perfectly fine. And your resume, it should showcase you. So it can be however you would want to put it together. We're not going to take off points or give you more points because it's pretty, right? But obviously make sure you spell check it because that also gives us information about detail orientation. But yes, you don't have to go and pay for some kind of amazing, resume. I would say if it showcases who you are and in a comprehensive way, your skills, and I always encourage people to use bullet points and to make sure that they are using active verbs under each of their experiences to showcase what they've done.
And you might also ask someone else to take a look at your resume, particularly if it's someone who doesn't know you very well, so that you can make sure that the key things that you wanted to highlight stood out. You can ask them after they read it, what stood out to you as you read my resume, so that you make sure things like those transferable skills really come through in that resume that you submit.
Thanks, Ronnie. And I just want to mention, I know we're a little bit over an hour. We only have a couple more slides, but those of you that are not able to stay with us any longer and have to log off, I do want to mention that we'll put the PowerPoint and we'll put some other handouts, GRE, into an email. And so if you leave your email address in the chat, we'll copy those emails and send you this information as well. And our contact information is in this PowerPoint, will also be on the email. This is just a slide in case you're doing the application and you have troubles with something. There's a lot of support. If it's technical, that's through the Apply Yourself. We also have a new person working with us on the applications, but for specific questions, we can't see your application, but Sarah Homer can see your application. She's the person in the department assigned to help with the applications. We can't see it, but so she can offer guidance to you if you're completing the application. Dr. Taylor and I can offer any kind of more specific program advice or respond to program questions that you have.
I was just starting to type in the chat and my typos got ahead of me, but someone asked if we would be submitting the, or if we would send the recordings to folks afterwards, and we could certainly do that. It probably will be too big of a file to send over email, but I can send it through a Dropbox link or a Box link.
Great. Maybe we can set it up in Dropbox. And
yes, just make sure that you put your email in there if you haven't already, so we can make sure to send it to you.
Oh, I see a question about a writing sample. You do not have to upload a writing sample for us. That's mainly for our doctoral programs. If you want, you can, but it's not required. Okay. Just a few more things. We just have a few more slides, kind of just letting you know more about some of the frequently asked questions that we get. You can see that last year we got quite a few applications. The school counseling program was between 50 and 60, clinical mental health counseling 116. We had a question about, will we increase the size of our admissions pool this coming year? We would love to. We talk about it every year, and we would love to increase. I don't know if we'll be able to, and if we were able to, it might only be by a few. But the need for mental health practitioners in the state of Utah is so great that it's always something on our minds. It's always something we talk about when it comes to admission season. And I can't say either way. I know we can support 12 Salt Lake City school counselors and clinical mental health counselors, and 4 to 8 in each of our programs in St. George. I know we can do that right now, but we won't know more if we can admit additional students. We won't know that until admissions, closer to admissions.
And one of the reasons why we have such small cohorts is because we want students to be able to have a personal experience with us as professors and to get to know us better. And when classrooms get really big, then it's harder for students to have the same sorts of opportunities and the same sorts of experiential learning that's just easier and more easier to do in the smaller sorts of cohorts.
Absolutely.
I should also mention too, just briefly for students in the CMHC program, we also pair students with, so incoming students with a faculty member who's their advisor throughout the program. And we also pair them with a peer mentor. And I believe in the school counseling program, they have peer mentors too. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
A couple of questions around that would sometimes get around how can I be a more competitive applicant? I know that was a question that came up earlier tonight too with what can I do to be more likely to get admitted? And so we'll talk very briefly about this just to give you some additional suggestions. Think about related volunteer experience. Sometimes students apply, but they don't have any experience in the counseling sort of realm. So think about any sort of volunteer work you might want to do. We have on here if you're interested in school counseling, for example, do you have any experiences interacting with children and adolescents, even if it's not school counseling? Do you have experiences working with those populations? Strengthen your personal statement. We talked a little bit about things that can help with that, questions to consider as you're writing that up. You might consider having someone else read your personal statement as well and asking them what stood out in that personal statement. So you make sure that the message you're trying to send is the one that comes through. Strong letters of recommendation help as well. And in particular, demonstrating program fit. How does our program fit with your career goals? We want to enable our students to be successful in areas in which our expertise areas map onto their areas of interest as well. And so it's helpful to know a bit about what your career goals are along the way. And how does our program fit with your interests, with your values, with your training needs? I know Dr. Metz brought up a really good point before about our values around multiculturalism and social justice and strengths-based sort of approach. Those are helpful things to highlight for fit between you and the program as well. Is there anything else you would add, Dr. Metz? I know we're running out of time, but.
No, I think that's good.
Great.
And then we just have hyperlinks to sometimes questions about university fees with respect to tuition. What do university fees cover? Financial aid. Many of our students take out loans. There are scholarships. Unfortunately, you can't apply for scholarships until you're a matriculating student, but the students who have been in our program, in our clinical mental health and our school counseling have been very competitive, have received large scholarships. I have 2 school counseling students who received a $17,000 scholarship for their second year in the program. So never think that you shouldn't apply. That happens typically where students tell me, well, I didn't apply because I just thought there's so many people applying. Well, last year we weren't able to give out a scholarship because no one applied to it. We had extra money. So always apply. and we as directors send out, it's always posted on the College of Education website. We send out links to it. We tell you when the scholarship portal is open. We encourage you to apply so you will know about the scholarship opportunities.
And we have several students in the CMHC program who also have scholarships and fellowships as well. I would say primarily students fund their graduate education through student loans or through part-time or full-time jobs, but there are some opportunities within our college as well. I'll just very briefly mention this is our tuition costs. They vary a little year to year, but it's generally in this ballpark. And you can calculate these costs if you use the website that we put up here at the top of the screen. One of the benefits of our program is that it is more economical than other programs. In fact, I looked at another program nearby and their cost was a little over $52,000 for their program. So not quite, but almost twice as much as how much our program costs to complete.
And I would say one thing about the cost. I know it's scary to see how much it costs to get a master's degree, but this is an investment in your future, right? This is it is an investment of your money, of your time, of your energy, but as many of you are here, I believe you probably value this. I believe you probably value education and can see how it can contribute to a future that you'll find fulfilling, right? And so the next slide, our final slide, is employment information. You can see the median wages of both of these fields of study, specific to Utah. They are both careers where there is a projected growth, especially here in Utah. You can see almost 40% for clinical mental health counselors and 32% projected growth for school counselors. We still have a shortage of school counselors. There are more jobs right now than there are people who are licensed to practice as a school counselor. So it's a great time to go into both of these fields. There is a true need.
Absolutely. And this is our final slide, but we wanted to make sure to include our contact information as well as directors of the programs, and along with our program assistants as well. So Ryan Mayfield is the program assistant for the CMHC program, and Chloe Mitchell is the program assistant for the school counseling program as well. So feel free to email either one of us, depending on the program that you're interested in. I'll go ahead and stop sharing, and I'll also stop the recording just so we can open it up for questions. Or I guess, AJ, will you